So, San Francisco just passed a bill banning all vapes and e-cigarette sales. They're the first U.S. city to do so. Now, is it just me or does this sound ridiculous? But being an inquisitive mind, I decided to look into it, thinking maybe there's something I'm missing. Perhaps there is a good reason why they are banning e-cigs and vapes. Now, I don't vape myself. Maybe I'm just too old, I missed the boat. But I went and read a few articles. And the articles they sourced were so belitheringly stupid that I'm going to drop the pretense here of objective journalism, because the banning of e-cigs and vapes that they just carte blanche banned strikes me as so stupid and the reasons given as so dumb that I want to dig into it a little bit. Particularly as they cite in a lot of these articles the Surgeon General, and the Surgeon General, the federal government Surgeon General, and the dangers of e-cigs. So I thought I'd go through, point by point, what the Surgeon General cites as the dangers of e-cigs. Now you might be thinking, what's my bias? Well, my bias is being intellectually feeble, and I really strongly dislike when adults use poor scientific information and the guise of protecting children to further an agenda that makes no sense. I find it erodes teenagers' credibility and trust in society and adults. It's the same nonsense, I find, that you're told, or at least I was told growing up, about marijuana and the dangers of it, the gateway drugs. And you grow up with your peers being told this by society, and you realize the science being promulgated by these people, by these adults, or by the government, doesn't seem to add up. And what this does is provides a disconnect. And so then teenagers are more likely to distrust, things they're told by adults, and more likely to experiment in the end. Kind of has a Streisand effect. And this irritates me. I've seen this happen with other aspects, and I see it again happening with e-cigs. So I want to go through the Surgeon General's problems with e-cigs and examine their reasoning. So let's take a look at their website. If you, the viewer, would like to know where I'm pulling this information from, I'm getting it from ecigarettes.surgeongeneral.gov. I figured we'd just start in chronological order here and begin with brain risks. So the Surgeon General claims long-lasting effects of exposing young developing brains to nicotine. These risks include nicotine addiction, mood disorders, and permanent lowering of impulse control. Nicotine also changes the way synapses are formed, which can harm the parts of the brain that control attention and learning. I 70% agree with it. Yes, if you start earlier, you are more likely to become addicted to nicotine. So are you with caffeine or any other substance you start. Now, what about the mood disorders and impulse control claims they make? Well, they cite no sources. But I can cite a study. The theory that nicotine affects adolescent minds is based on a very old study done on adolescent rodents, rats. There's never been any study of humans that shows cognitive impairment of nicotine and the long-term effects of it. Zero. Second point, the Surgeon General lists about e-cigs, addiction. Young people's brains build synapses faster than adult brains. Because addiction is a form of learning, adolescents can become addicted more easily than adults. The nicotine in e-cigarettes and other tobacco products can also prime the adolescent brain for addiction to other drugs such as cocaine. Once again, no study is cited. Now, alright, if you want to make the tentative link between addiction, seems like a reasonable one to pick as they are both stimulants. But what about giving a kid Adderall or Ritalin at an early age? Does that not also prime their brain for stimulants? If you're dosing a kid with amphetamines daily after day after day after day under the diagnosis, perhaps legitimate, of ADHD, but you are giving them a strong stimulant drug. What about caffeine? Does that not also prime the young adolescent brain for further addictions down the road from stimulants? Something to think about. The third risk the Surgeon General lists is behavior risks. They say e-cigarettes among youth and adults is strongly linked to the use of other tobacco products, such as regular cigarettes, cigars, hookah, and smokeless tobacco. Some evidence suggests that e-cigarette use is linked to alcohol use and other substances such as marijuana. Okay, 1. Causation versus correlation. Does that mean people that are already smoking cigs or hookah are then occasionally vaping? Or vice versa? Does it show that people that start vaping then start smoking regular cigarettes? Where's the study on that? Once again, the Surgeon General cites no studies. What about alcohol? People have a tendency to smoke when they're drunk as well. This doesn't really mean anything. The Surgeon General website goes on to say, some people have suggested that the use of e-cigarettes by young people might protect them from cigarettes. There is no evidence to support this claim. Some studies show that non-smoking youths who use e-cigarettes are more likely to try conventional cigarettes in the future than non-smoking youths who do not use e-cigarettes. Sure, but I'm sure there's also a variety of factors. Were the same people that tried e-cigarettes likely to try cigarettes to begin with? Who knows? Once again, hard to prove these claims. The Surgeon General website continues, Burned tobacco products like cigarettes are responsible for the overwhelming majority of tobacco-related deaths and disease in the United States. True. Burned tobacco products. Is a vaporizing pen burned tobacco? No, it's an aerosol. It's vaporizing liquid. Which takes me to the Surgeon General's blurb about aerosol and other risks stemming from e-cigs and vaporizers. Let's read. The aerosol from e-cigarettes is not harmless. It contains harmful and potentially harmful chemicals, including nicotine. Yes, including nicotine. It elevates your heart, maybe putting you at risk of a heart attack or stroke much later in life. But let's continue. Including nicotine, ultrafine particles that can be inhaled deep into the lungs, flavorings such as diacetyl, a chemical linked to serious lung disease, volatile organic compounds such as benzene, which is found in car exhaust, and heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead. Scientists are still working to fully understand the health effects and harmful dose of e-cigarette contents when they're heated and turned into aerosol. So one, the Surgeon General kind of actively admits they're still doing research. The jury's still out. But then let's break it down one by one. Contains harmful products like nicotine. Sure. Okay. So does nicotine gum. Second risk, diacetyl, a chemical linked to serious lung disease. Well, one, there is no diacetyl in Juul pods. The biggest vape company does not use diacetyl. Second, what does linked to serious health disease mean? Once again, is this an epidemiological study? Linked, causation versus correlation. Is there causatory evidence or just corollary evidence? My guess is if there was actual causatory evidence, they would have pointed to it, rather than just saying linked to serious, linked to death. Driving in a car is linked to death. But what about heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead? Yes, heavy metals can be toxic at certain doses, but they didn't define what that dose rate is. They didn't define the LD50 of whatever this heavy metal is. In fact, iron, for instance, is also another type of metal that can be dangerous and toxic, although it can also be necessary for human life. It depends on the dose. People that are low in iron are anemic. When you take too much iron, you get sick. It doesn't mean anything again. It all comes back to what is the given amount in a product or in a dose. And the Surgeon General continues, scientists are still working to understand more fully health effects and harmful doses of e-cigarette contents when they are heated and turned into aerosol, both for the active users who inhale from the device and for those who are exposed to aerosol secondhand. Which gets me to secondhand smoke. Let's talk about secondhand smoke for a second, because once again this traces back to my bias towards those who are intellectually feeble. Yes, smoking will kill you, but you know what also kills people? Ignorance. So secondhand smoke was investigated by the EPA in the early 90s. And the EPA, when they went to go investigate secondhand smoke, they ran 6 studies. And those 6 studies, they could not get a confidence interval of 95%. So they took all those 6 studies and did a meta-analysis. And in that meta-analysis, they could not get a 95% confidence interval either. If you don't know what confidence intervals, they're very important to statistical claims. But the EPA were not able to get these 95% confidence intervals. So they lowered it to 90. They cheated. The EPA straight up cheated their scientific research to show that there was indeed harmful carcinogenic effects from secondhand smoke in the early 90s, even though they couldn't prove it. And in the later 90s, the judge actually struck down the research, saying no, they have never actually shown a causatory effect of secondhand smoke having any carcinogenic effect on other people. Now you might think, oh, well this is the 90s, that was then, I'm sure there's more science lately. Well, let's look at a study from 2013. Journal of National Cancer Institute. Seems like a pretty reliable scientific paper, right? What's the headline of this? 2013 is the date. No clear link between passive smoke and lung cancer. So the article in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute surveyed over 76,000 women over a decade, and they found no statistical evidence that those that were exposed to passive smoke were at any higher risk to lung cancer than those that were not. The only thing they found were for women who lived with their spouse or significant other who was an active smoker for over 30 years. If the woman had lived with somebody for over 30 years that was an active smoker, there was a borderline statistical significance. Borderline, meaning possibly, which circles all the way back to the EPA when they couldn't actually prove with any confidence that indeed secondhand smoke caused lung cancer or was it carcinogenic. So then to claim, the Surgeon General, that vaporizing, that turning water vapor, the aerosol from nicotine, is somehow going to damage other people's lungs or be a carcinogenic, I don't buy it. Not when they could even prove that normal tobacco cigarette smoke was a carcinogenic secondhand. Now, don't get me wrong, it is deadly and a carcinogenic if you yourself smoke it as an individual, but secondhand smoke, no. Jury's still out, not proven. In fact, it seems pretty unlikely at this point. And the the gall for the Surgeon General to now suggest in 2019 that e-cigs and vaporizers might contribute to secondhand smoke? That is a yikes for me, Surgeon General. Check your facts. Now, with all these disputes I have with the Surgeon General and e-cigs, you might think, does this guy have a sponsorship with Juul or something? Is some e-cig vape company paying him off? No. I just think the law is stupid. Joule is headquartered in San Francisco. They'll just go across the Bay Bridge and set up shop in Brooklyn. I was at Brooklyn because I live in New York. They'll set up in Berkeley or Oakland, and then they'll sell there. And they'll be fine. The idea that San Francisco is going to somehow ban all sales in their little city when Oakland and Berkeley are right there, people just drive across the bridge and buy any vape or e-cig they want or any Juul pod they want. The idea that they're somehow going to stop or restrict e-cigs is 1, laughable, and 2, ridiculous, and 3, just drives the industry across the water to another town. They just lose money. So no, I don't have any sort of sponsorship or back-end deal or vested interest in Juul whatsoever. I just think the law is not only fundamentally stupid on a pragmatic level of Juul will just sell in Oakland. 10 miles away. Well, you know, what's the point of that? But 2, the science is so poor and the arguments are so poor that I just couldn't help but speak out a little bit on it. Anyway, I'm curious to know what you guys' thoughts are. Click around for another video. Thanks for watching. See you guys tomorrow.